I was 14 years old at the time, and what started as a totally normal evening quickly spiraled into one of the most terrifying experiences of my life, resulting into this being one of Home Alone horror stories. It was around 9 p.m., and I was babysitting my younger cousin at his house just outside Chicago. My mom and aunt had gone out shopping at Woodfield Mall, and my dad and uncle were catching a movie, so it was just the two of us home for the night. Nothing unusual, just some cartoons, snacks, and hanging out in the living room. But something didn't sit right with me. I couldn't explain it at first. There wasn't a specific noise or anything obvious, it was just this creeping, gnawing sense that something was off. I kept brushing it off, trying to ignore it, focusing on the TV and trying not to freak myself out. Still, the unease wouldn't go away. It felt like my body was trying to warn me before my brain even knew why. Eventually, I got up to check the back door. It's something I normally wouldn't have thought twice about, but the feeling was too strong to ignore. I walked through the kitchen and toward the door to lock it. As I turned around to head back into the living room, that's when I saw him. This is why I present this as part of Home Alone scary stories. There, staring through the window above the sink, was a man. He looked completely worn down, dirty, ragged clothes, gaunt face, wild eyes. He looked like he hadn't had a proper meal, shower, or sleep in weeks. But the most chilling part wasn't how he looked. It was what he was looking at, not me, but my cousin. He was locked in, unblinking, just watching him through the glass. Every alarm in my body went off. I didn't react outwardly. I didn't scream or run or even pause for long. Instinct took over. I didn't want to alert my cousin to what was happening. The last thing I wanted was to scare him or make him panic, so I just casually said, "Hey, let's go upstairs. Your mom and my mom are gonna be back soon, and you know they won't want you staying up too late." He didn't suspect a thing, just followed me upstairs like it was all routine. I got him tucked into bed, doing my best to keep my hands from shaking, and once I made sure he was settled, I left the room. I wasn't going to sleep. There was a strange man outside who clearly wanted to come in, and I had no idea what his intentions were, but I was pretty sure they weren't good. I was about 5 feet 8 inches and 125 pounds at the time, and I played football for school, so I wasn't completely helpless. Still, I was just a kid, and I was scared out of my mind. I headed back downstairs, this time straight into the kitchen, and grabbed the heaviest thing I could find, a metal meat tenderizer, the kind with little spikes on one side. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. I went back to the window where I'd seen the man before. He was gone. That somehow made it even worse. I sprinted to the front door, double-checked that both the deadbolt and doorknob were locked. They were. I ran back upstairs, still clutching the meat tenderizer, and went straight into my cousin's room. I sat down right in front of the door and told him everything was fine, just to keep his head down and stay under the covers. I called the police immediately, and then my dad and uncle. The cops said it would take about 30 minutes to get there, and my dad and uncle were at least 45 minutes out. And then I heard it. The unmistakable crash of a window shattering. My blood turned to ice. The man had gotten in. Then came the heavy sound of boots stomping on the hardwood floor downstairs. It was deliberate, slow, heavy steps. The kind of footsteps you feel as much as hear. I whispered to my cousin to stay hidden under the blankets and to stay completely silent, no matter what. Those next few minutes felt like hours. I could hear the man moving around the first floor, opening doors, going room to room like he was searching for something, or someone. Every creak, every thud made my heart race faster. Then, the footsteps started up the stairs. I gripped the meat tenderizer so tightly my knuckles went white. He was coming closer. My cousin's room was just a few feet from the top of the staircase. I heard him open my aunt and uncle's bedroom door. Then the bathroom. But he didn't try ours. After a few moments, I heard him go back downstairs. Silence. And then the basement door creaked open. I didn't move. I didn't dare make a sound. I just stayed in front of the door, praying that help would get there before anything else happened. 15 agonizing minutes later, I finally heard sirens outside. Blue and red lights flashed through the windows, and then the police burst in through the front door. The man didn't resist. They found him trying to wedge himself behind some shelves in the basement. We found out later that he had escaped from a mental health facility over 100 miles away, across state lines, even. He'd been missing for days. No one knew how he got to the area, or how he chose that house. Maybe he was just wandering. Maybe he saw my cousin through the window and something in his fractured mind latched onto that. I don't know. All I do know is that if I hadn't trusted that gut feeling, if I just ignored it, or if I hadn't locked the doors, or hadn't reacted the way I did, things could have ended very, very differently. That night changed how I see the world. It taught me to trust my instincts, even when I can't explain them. And to never, ever underestimate the importance of a locked door and a calm head. It was one of those still, sticky evenings in a tiny Ohio town, the kind where the only sounds outside were crickets and the occasional far-off hum of a car passing through when this part of true Home Alone horror stories unfolded. My older sibling and I were home alone. Not in the mischievous, movie kind of way, this wasn't some grand adventure. It was just an ordinary evening in a not-so-ordinary setting. We had moved here not too long ago, trading the buzz and bustle of the city for this quiet little place that had fewer residents than my mom's high school graduating class. No joke. It was the kind of town where everyone waved from their porch and strangers stuck out like neon signs. That day, our parents had told us they were heading down the street to check on my great-grandmother. She lived just a couple houses away in a cozy little unit my grandparents had built on their property so she could keep her independence, even in her old age. My grandparents were out of town, so the responsibility fell on my parents to make sure everything was okay. They said they'd be gone an hour, maybe 2 tops, and that when they got back, we'd order pizza. That promise was enough to keep 7-year-old me and my 14-year-old sibling content. At least for a while. We fired up the game console, the one thing my sibling could still enjoy even while grounded. Their phone and the house phone had both been locked away in my dad's gun safe, a heavy, cold metal box with a mysterious combination neither of us knew. To this day, I can't recall what my sibling did to earn the punishment. Something trivial. Teenager stuff. Maybe it was talking back, maybe sneaking out. All I knew was that they were stuck inside, and so was I. Time passed quickly at first. Video games will do that. But then our stomachs began to remind us of the pizza we'd been promised. We paused the game and waited for the sound of the car pulling into the driveway. It never came. Instead, after what must have been 2 hours, maybe more, there was a knock on the door. I raced down the stairs, excited, sure it was our parents balancing pizza boxes and soda bottles. My sibling came down a moment later, having saved the game mid-level. Our front door had a large window, and as I approached, I expected to see the familiar face of my mom smiling back at me. But it wasn't her. Standing there, backlit by the porch light, was a man I didn't recognize. Tall, lean, white, probably in his mid-20s, with short black hair and a rough, scruffy beard. He had this look about him, something unplaceable. Maybe it was the fact that I'd never seen him before in a town where everyone knew everyone, or maybe it was the way he looked at the door. I raised a finger to him, just a second, then closed the curtain without opening the door. When I turned around, I saw my sibling frozen, staring at the door with an expression I hadn't seen before. It wasn't confusion. It was fear. Real, cold fear. Then the knocking changed. It turned urgent, pounding, like fists slamming into the door. The handle jiggled violently. He was trying to open it. Panic set in. We couldn't call our parents. The phones were locked away. We were truly alone. My sibling sprang into action, grabbing my hand and dragging me to the kitchen. They yanked open the drawer and grabbed the first knife they saw, only for it to snap in their hand. It was one of those old, cheap ones. They tossed it aside and grabbed another, larger one. We ran into the laundry room and huddled behind the door, the only barrier between us and whatever was on the other side. I remember the way they held me close, one arm around my shoulders and the other gripping that kitchen knife like they were ready to take on the world. The banging continued. The sound echoed through the walls, shaking my tiny body. Every second felt like an hour, every breath shallow. Then, quiet. The door opened. We held our breath. My sibling was ready to lunge, adrenaline and terror combining into something fierce and protective. But instead of a stranger, our mom came around the corner, holding 2 pizza boxes and looking completely confused. We scrambled up from the floor, tears pouring down our cheeks, shouting over each other to explain what had happened. That's when she laughed. Not in a mean way, more in disbelief. She said our dad was outside, talking to the man right now. Apparently, the guy had been asking about an old, broken-down car in our driveway. Said he was a mechanic. Curious if we wanted to sell it. There was no "for sale" sign on the car. It hadn't moved in months. It barely even worked. And who comes by to talk about buying a car at 9 or 10 p.m.? Our mom felt awful when she saw how shaken we were. She hugged us tight and promised they'd never lock the phones away when they went out again. That night, we ate our pizza between sniffles and shaky breaths, trying to laugh it off. My sibling kept the knife nearby for the rest of the night. For years, I accepted the story. I was a kid. Adults said it was fine, so it must have been. But now, as an adult myself, the whole thing gnaws at me. Who does that? Who pounds on a door when a child answers with a "hold on" gesture? Who shakes a doorknob when no one's invited them in? What kind of adult tries to talk business with strangers in the dark? It doesn't sit right. I've tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was socially awkward, maybe he really did want to buy the car. Maybe. But the older I get, the more that night haunts me. It wasn't normal. It wasn't safe. And honestly, I don't want to think about what might have happened if our parents had stayed just 10 minutes longer. I was 20 years old, living in a quiet little rental just outside Jefferson City, Missouri. On the surface, it looked like any other peaceful Midwest neighborhood, trees lining the roads, gravel driveways, porch lights casting warm glows in the dark. But that night, around 1 a.m., my world turned upside down in a way I never expected. Let me share as part of the true Home Alone scary stories. Back then, I was trying to rebuild my life after surviving something many people only read about or see on TV. I had a domestic violence protection order in place against my soon-to-be ex-husband. The paper told me I was safe, but that piece of paper didn't ease the way my nerves tightened at every sound. Living alone after everything I'd been through was empowering, but terrifying. I was always a little on edge, never fully able to relax. That night, I was wide awake. Couldn't sleep. My thoughts were spinning, heavy and relentless. That's when I heard it. Gravel. Crunching beneath footsteps. Not just once. Not someone walking by. Someone was moving around, circling. I crept to the window and pulled back the curtain just enough to see without being seen. There, in the dim light, I saw a figure pacing around my home. They weren't wandering or lost, they were checking things. Peering into windows. Testing door handles. Deliberate, methodical. My heart started hammering against my ribcage. I didn't know if it was fear or instinct, but I ducked away from the window and backed toward the kitchen. That's when I remembered, the window was open. The screen was still in place, but that thin mesh suddenly felt like tissue paper. Thankfully, I lived on the second floor, and the window sat a good 15 feet off the ground. Not the easiest access point. Still, I couldn't help but imagine a ladder, or worse, someone desperate enough to try anyway. I crouched low near the wall, every part of me tense and trembling. Then I caught a whiff of something sharp, chemical, and unmistakable. Gasoline. And just like that, everything changed. This wasn't someone trying to steal a TV or rummage through drawers. This was someone trying to end my life. I fumbled for my phone, hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. Dialed 911. The words tumbled out between shallow, panicked breaths. I told them everything I could. Someone was outside, pouring gasoline around the perimeter of my home. I didn't even need to say who I thought it was. I already knew. The police arrived within minutes, fast, thank God. I saw the red and blue lights flash across the walls, and for the first time in what felt like hours, I exhaled. They caught him. Right there. Gas can still in hand. And it was exactly who I feared. My ex-husband. The same man I had a court order against. The one I thought was out of my life. He had come back, not to argue, not to plead, but to burn everything down. With me inside. The officers arrested him on the spot, and I watched from the window as they put him in cuffs and led him away. I wasn't crying. I wasn't even shaking anymore. I just remember feeling hollow, like I'd stared death in the face and it blinked first. But that night flipped something inside me. A kind of quiet fury. I knew I couldn't live like that again, afraid, unprepared, exposed. So I made a decision. No more running. No more hiding. I started training. Relentlessly. At first it was just boxing, an outlet for all the fear and rage and adrenaline still running through my system. But it quickly became more than that. Every punch I threw felt like taking back control. Every drop of sweat, every bruise, every breathless session in the ring built me into someone stronger. Eventually, I went pro. I didn't just learn to fight, I became a fighter. Not long after, I was hired as a correctional officer at the state penitentiary. It was a tough job in a tough place. The kind of environment that chews people up and spits them out. But I thrived. I even received elite self-defense training, real, practical stuff, taught by the same instructors who trained Secret Service agents. It wasn't just kicks and punches, it was survival. And survive I did. That chapter of my life reshaped me. I went from being a scared woman in a dark apartment to a warrior no one wanted to mess with. I turned trauma into drive, fear into fire. And now, I'm nobody's victim. I'm nobody's target. I didn't just escape the flames, I learned how to fight fire with fire. Living alone in Malibu, California sounds like a dream to most people. Sunsets over the ocean, quiet mornings, and the kind of peace you can't find in a crowded city. And it is beautiful. But being a young, petite woman on your own adds a certain edge to that peacefulness, an invisible thread of tension woven into the background of every day. I try not to let that tension control me. I'm careful. I lock my doors religiously, share my location with close friends, and never let my guard completely down. Still, no matter how prepared you think you are, sometimes life tosses you something so unexpected, so deeply unsettling, that it shakes you in a way you never forget. It happened on what started out as an ordinary afternoon. The weather was perfect, not too hot, not too cool. I decided to go for a short run, just a few miles to clear my head and stretch out the stress. Nothing serious. Just movement and fresh air. As I was jogging back toward my apartment, I thought I'd treat myself. I pulled out my phone and ordered a juice on Postmates, something refreshing and cold to greet me when I got home. In my head, I pictured it waiting by the door like a little reward for getting off the couch. Of course, timing never works out quite so perfectly. The delivery was running behind. No big deal. I figured I had time to hop in the shower while I waited. I got home, kicked off my shoes, peeled off my running clothes, and stepped into the hot water. It was that perfect kind of shower, the kind where the heat washes away everything, from muscle aches to mental clutter. I was fully in the moment, hair full of shampoo, completely relaxed. And then I heard it. A knock. But not on the front door. Not even close. It was on the bathroom door. For a split second, I thought maybe I was imagining it. Maybe it was the plumbing shifting or some weird echo in the apartment. But then it came again. Harder. More deliberate. Someone was definitely knocking on the door to the room I was in. My heart didn't just skip a beat, it dropped straight into my stomach. I froze, every sense heightened, adrenaline already coursing through me. The apartment was supposed to be empty. I lived alone. And I was in the most vulnerable state possible, naked, wet, completely exposed. I shut the water off so fast I nearly slipped. I threw on a towel, then scrambled to grab whatever clothes were closest. I burst out of the bathroom, fully expecting to find a stranger, maybe worse, in my home. What I found instead? My juice. Sitting neatly on the kitchen counter. And the door to my apartment, wide open. That's when the pieces started coming together. The Postmates delivery driver. I hadn't locked the front door when I got back from my run. In my rush to get to the shower, I'd made one tiny, unconscious mistake. And because of it, a stranger had not only entered my home but had walked all the way to my bathroom door and knocked. As if to say, "Hey, your juice is here." To this day, I still can't comprehend it. I don't care if the door was unlocked. I don't care if it was wide open. No delivery person should ever walk into someone's home without permission, especially not into the private space of a woman living alone. That sense of safety I'd carefully built was shattered in an instant. I felt violated. Shaken. That wasn't just a delivery, it was an invasion. I didn't know the man. I didn't know his intentions. All I knew was that I was in the shower, and a stranger had made it into my home, right up to the door separating me from the rest of the world. Now, I don't just lock my doors, I double and triple check them. If I step outside for 5 seconds, the door gets locked behind me. I've changed how I use delivery services, too. Instructions now always include, "Do not knock. Do not enter. Leave it at the door." Every time. But more than anything, it's changed how I trust the world around me. Because the truth is, even one small lapse can open the door to something terrifying. And unfortunately, not everyone respects the boundaries that should never have to be explained in the first place. If you love disturbing true home alone horror stories, we focus on delivering such type of stories. Please subscribe to our channel so that you will not miss any of our weekly uploads. I used to live in a massive, crumbling old house, one of those looming Victorian-style beasts tucked away behind overgrown trees and a crooked fence, like it had been pulled out of time. The kind of place that held on to history in the walls, like secrets whispered too many times to forget. It was beautiful in its own way, tall ceilings, intricate woodwork, grand staircases, but it was tired. And haunted. Deeply, undeniably haunted. I shared the house with 9 other people. It was a communal living setup, artists, students, drifters, dreamers. With that many bodies under one roof, the house was never truly quiet. You'd hear footsteps in the hall even when no one was supposed to be home, doors creaking open and closed seemingly at random, the occasional whisper-like voice drifting from room to room. Most of us chalked it up to the age of the house or each other's weird habits. In time, those eerie little details just faded into the rhythm of daily life. But there was always something just beneath the surface. Something watching. Something listening. And then, one night, the illusion of comfort broke. It was a Thursday, I think. Everyone was out, gone home for the weekend, staying at a friend's, working late. Somehow, for the first time in months, I had the entire house to myself. At first, I didn't think much of it. I actually welcomed the solitude. I made myself dinner, curled up in the den with a book, and enjoyed the rare quiet. But the quiet didn't stay quiet for long. I started hearing things. At first, it was subtle. The creak of a floorboard above me. A faint whisper from the hallway. A door closing somewhere down the corridor. Normally, I'd dismiss it, chalk it up to someone coming home without me noticing. But this time, I knew better. I was alone. I had checked every room, every corner, just an hour earlier. No one else was here. Yet the house sounded like it was alive. Like people were moving through it in their usual patterns, walking up the stairs, shifting furniture, talking softly through closed doors. Except there were no people. That sense of unease started small, like a chill at the base of your neck. But it crept up, wrapping tighter and tighter around my chest. I tried to ignore it. I turned up some music. I told myself the house was just settling. But it didn't stop. By around 2 a.m., I couldn't shake the feeling anymore. I felt watched, like eyes were following my every move from the corners of the ceiling. In an effort to distract myself, I decided to go down to the basement and play the old upright piano that lived down there. I figured music might reset the energy, clear the space a little. The moment I stepped into the basement, I regretted it. That part of the house had always felt wrong, too cold, too quiet, like it existed a few inches to the left of reality. But this time, it was unbearable. I sat down at the piano and barely touched the keys when it hit me, this wall of energy. Angry. Heavy. Furious. It slammed into my chest like a wave. I felt dizzy, like the air had thickened around me. Imagine standing in a room with someone who's silently screaming at you, filled with rage but never saying a word. That's what it was like. You couldn't see it. You couldn't hear it. But you could feel it, boiling over in the dark. I froze. My hands hovered over the keys. My heart thudded so loudly I thought it might echo through the basement. And then, for reasons I still don't fully understand, I spoke out loud. "I'm sorry," I said into the stillness. "I didn't mean to disturb you. I'll leave now. I respect you as a roommate." The moment I said the word roommate, everything changed. The pressure lifted. The air cleared. The anger vanished as quickly as it had arrived. It was like I had acknowledged something that had been waiting to be seen. Like I had offered it the one thing it wanted, recognition. I backed away slowly, walked up the stairs, and returned to my room in a daze. I didn't dare leave the house that late, even though every part of me screamed to get out. Instead, I sat on my bed, legs crossed, trying to steady my breathing. About 20 minutes passed. Just when I was beginning to think maybe it was over, I noticed something strange on my wall. It wasn't a shadow. It wasn't light. It was something between, like the way heat looks when it shimmers off pavement. Distorted air, moving, alive. It had shape, too. Long, smooth, and lizard-like, about 3 feet in length. It was crawling. The thing slithered down the wall slowly, almost thoughtfully, reached the edge of my bed, and vanished. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. My heart was in my throat, and every muscle in my body had locked up with fear. I stayed like that until dawn, when the sun finally pushed away the darkness. After that night, I started seeing the house differently. It wasn't just old and creaky. It was inhabited. Not by rats or drafts or figments of an overactive imagination, but by something conscious. Something aware. I lived there for another 6 months, but I was never really alone again. The house had accepted me, I think. Or at least tolerated me. But I never went back into the basement. Not once. And I've never called a house home without checking twice for things that live between the walls and beyond the veil. Because some houses, they remember. They feel. And if you're not careful, they just might introduce themselves. If you have any of allegedly true Home Alone horror stories, please share in the comments section, we will share it. Also,